Welcome to Healthy Conversations, sharing the knowledge, experience, stories, and the wisdom of herbalists and other natural healers, with your host, Stephen Horn. Today's guest, Kimberly Vallis. Hello, and welcome again to Healthy Conversations. With me today is a very long-term friend, business partner in crime. Well, that's just a joke because we've had some fun times together, and we've co-taught. We both are enjoy teaching together, and she's a naturopath and really good expert in nutritional supplements, one of the best I know. And also, what we're going to talk about today, blood work. So medical doctors rely heavily on blood work for analysis, but there are some flaws in the way they look at the blood work. So we want to talk about that today. So Kim, go ahead and let's get started.
There are flaws in how we look at a lot of Western stuff.
Yeah, of course.
Well, we want to talk about blood. I mean, when I tell people I really like blood, it doesn't sound creepy at all, right? So, but it just gives us so much information. Everything that we see, and we take that as an analogy, like it's everything on the bus, right? So everything has to go through the blood. Our nutrients go through the blood, our toxins go through the blood, our oxygen. It's everything that's on the bus. So if we can see who's on the bus, who got off the bus, who didn't ride the bus to the right stop, then we kind of have a good outlook of how each body system is affected. And you and I teach with body systems because
yes,
we're looking at structure and function. So
and also biological terrain, which the blood is a very great measure of the terrain of the body, what's happening in the environment of the body as a
right,
whole. Yeah.
right. So that environment, just like our tree analogy, if you have a plant, its environment is the water, the soil,
Mm-hmm.
the air, the sunlight. So it's like there's a lot of factors with the blood as well, being part of the biological terrain. And when we look at that, we're looking at structure and function because we don't want to go into a pathology with this because then we're chasing that one little thing down the rabbit hole, right?
Yeah.
And what happens when you catch it? Well, there's probably 20 other things that have already occurred at that point. So we want to look at structure and function, which we're going to refer to as physiology instead of diagnostic, which is pathology. So when we look at more of our terminology of functional medicine, right? So functional medicine is basically that, structure and function.
Right.
And we're very safe in talking about them, in a either a non-degreed or non-licensed medical area or naturopathic area. So when we look at what the blood tells us, we're looking at these Western values, right? So their lab ranges, first of all, are based off of really sick people. So we have
Right.
the
So
average.
they're based on the average of a population that on average is overweight uh, and not
Yeah,
particularly healthy. So the
right.
ranges are based on unhealthy people.
The ranges are based on unhealthy. And I've watched that over the years too. I've been doing this for 25 years now. So looking at that over the years, we watch the glucose numbers like, oh no, it's okay to have a little bit higher. Oh, a little bit higher is fine. And then as far as cholesterol, oh no, we want low, 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 low. And that's not health, right? Just
No.
because you're driving a number to a destination, it doesn't mean it even bought a ticket to get to that destination, right?
Well, it isn't taking into account everything else that's going on with that. It's just changing
Nothing.
one value, and that one
One
value
value.
is isolated from everything else that's going on.
Exactly. So that isolation is not functional medicine. That's what we're trying to avoid. So we want to see the whole picture. We
Mm-hmm.
want to see here's this number, where does it function within a given range? And some of those ranges I actually do alter based on more current data and research. So we're constantly updating them because we want it based on a health range and not a disease range.
Yeah. So let's take just to get this practical, cholesterol. Okay.
Oh
What
boy.
what what? Well, we pick one that's just very obvious, right? So
Yeah.
what is the normal
Mm-hmm.
lab range for cholesterol?
Well, lately, lately, depends on which lab you're using too. And lately, I've seen it listed from 0 to 169. Okay.
Uh-huh, right.
Well, let's look at
Used to
this.
be
So
0
here
to 100, right? To 200, right? That
to
was a typical.
200, right?
Yeah. So now
Right. So
it's
now,
lowered, right?
exactly. I know. So now we're in the
So
crazy
so
range
if
here
if we
too.
had a cholesterol of 20, we would be healthy, right?
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like I love some of the things, at 0, you're dead.
Exactly.
Okay. But you're still in lab range. So, hey, I mean, life has got to be good, right?
Right. Absolutely.
Oh, my word. So, when you look at some of them are 0 to 199 now, but then people get to like 170 and they're getting put on statin drugs. Okay. And, okay, I am not in favor of statins. I'll put that out there, first of all. But there are other factors, that we look at with the cholesterol of different components of it. So a lot of this gets based on just that one number of total cholesterol, and that doesn't really give us the whole story,
Right.
right? I mean, just diving into that a little bit, we might want to talk about cholesterol more in detail later, but normal range, let's say 0 to 199. All right. Well, when we start looking at a lot of research and a lot of data, there's like a J curve with that.
Hmm.
So it can actually mean that at 130, you're at much higher risk for cardiovascular or different abnormal cell activity than you are at even 300.
Okay. So
It's like at 300, your body's trying to tell you a story, right? So we just
mhm.
want to know what's the story? What are you trying to tell us? And that's how we're approaching this from a function standpoint.
Yeah. So first of all, the range that you use is from where to where?
So I look at the 175 to 275, and especially I look at that with postmenopausal women and our O blood types. They just tend to run a little bit higher. And
So
again,
so if you're
that's just one
220,
number.
if you're 225 and or 250, really you're not unhealthy in your cholesterol.
You it depends. Okay.
Well,
I
I
have
know.
to,
Yeah, I mean, I
yeah,
understand what the second half of this is taking that into account with other tests that are showing what's
right,
happening in the body,
right,
not just the cholesterol. But
right.
you shouldn't, just because your cholesterol is 220, that alone shouldn't worry you, right? There's no reason
No,
to
it's just a
force the
one
cholesterol.
number.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
just one number.
it's a one number that we're not looking at the whole picture, and that isolation, again, why is it telling us this? Why is it responding and why is it doing what it's doing? We want to know the why. We don't
Right.
want to just drive the number down. That's kind of my analogy I use too, that you have a smoke alarm going off, right? It's really loud. We hate loud noises. That's our
Mhm.
two fears we're born with in life, or the fear of falling and loud noises. So we don't like loud noises, even though we
Right.
might adapt. But we just, instead of just putting duct tape over that smoke alarm to make the noise go away, it doesn't mean the smoke went away. You've still got smoke. And where there's smoke, there's a fire. Where there's fire, there's a match that started the fire. Where there's a match, there's a little arsonist that had to strike that match. So how do we get backwards to the arsonist? That's our goal in looking at patterns and looking at the functional structure of what the blood chemistry is telling us.
So what you do is you look at that one number in combination with a whole bunch of other numbers to give
Whole
you a
bunch.
story. And
Yeah.
what are some of the reasons that the cholesterol might be high, for example? I mean, there's multiple reasons why the cholesterol might elevate. Why don't we just talk about
Absolutely. Absolutely. So a lot of times, and especially I'll just give you one factor in looking at some case studies. So cholesterol is your precursor for vitamin D production. Vitamin D is the only vitamin that also acts as a hormone. So especially in postmenopausal women with their D levels dropping, cholesterol will elevate to compensate.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
And
and
what
we've actually got studies showing that cholesterol can actually protect against hypertension. We hear the opposite of that a lot, but it's a raw material. It's a raw material that makes hormones. It forms a cell membrane. It helps with neurological issues. It prevents abnormal cell activity from forming. And I mean, it's pretty much necessary for all the tissue repair in our body. So what's going on that needs repair? That's my first step,
Hmm.
because if you see the cholesterol elevated and you get an elevated pattern with some other things, we want to look at inflammation. We want to understand what it's trying to tell us. What needs repair? So
Hmm.
let's go discover the little arsonist that's tearing things up that are needing repair.
Didn't they at one time look at high cholesterol as a potential sign of low thyroid?
Yes, that was, well, the hyperthyroid, because of the autoimmune portion of it. Because if we don't have enough cholesterol, we tend to get those little switches that get turned on with
Hmm.
some of the autoimmune, with some of the genetic switches there.
Yeah. So the two factors are to try to adjust the numbers into a range that's based more on healthy people rather than sick people.
Where
And
do we
second,
find those?
well, I've often thought about that. We should be, if we want to understand health, we should go take a whole bunch of really healthy people, right? And and look at how they live, take their blood test numbers, try to understand what health is more than we understand what disease is. Because
Yes,
if you understand health, then you start to see how the body's deviating from that pattern of health,
exactly. You
and
have
then you,
something to go towards instead of something you're running away from, right?
a
Sometimes we
good
don't
point, yeah,
even know what we're running from, right?
right.
It's just like, oh, we don't want to go there. But how do you not go there? And you have to understand that health part of the equation.
So by looking at other things going on in the blood work, you can get an idea of which things might be happening in the body that are causing the cholesterol to be high, right?
Right. So we make patterns, right? So we
Hmm.
have they're referred to as biomarkers. So how do certain biochemistries interact with each other? Which ones are contingent on the other? How do they need to partner? Are you reliant on this to function, with the liver functioning? So if we've got cholesterol, obviously we're relating that to the hepatic system with liver.
Hmm.
So we want to look at what else is affecting hepatic system to get some clues here.
All right. So that's a very different way of looking at the blood than the way medicine is looking at it, which is like you say, it's let's shift a number. Like, and let's take another example. Let's suppose someone in their blood is low in a particular mineral. Does that mean that giving them that mineral is going to fix the problem?
Of course it does. Not.
Like, okay, if someone is low in total iron,
Or
then
calcium.
all
Yeah.
or calcium, all we need to do is give them calcium carbonate
Right.
or iron or ferrous fumarate, and it's going to fix it, right?
Yeah, no.
Buzz or
So
no, wrong, but tell us why.
I know. Well, I mean, okay, so let's use calcium because everybody is on this calcium kick. Like, our society and the Netherlands have the highest consumption of dairy, yet we have the worst bone structure of any other country. But we're supposedly, right, getting our calcium through dairy. So
Yeah,
drink more
which is
milk, right?
yeah, yep, right.
Yeah, well, that doesn't work because the calcium is bound in there to a different casein, an A1 beta casein. So you're not going to get the calcium. And then it goes through a high flash pasteurization heat process, and
And
that binds we
doesn't that bind the calcium to the phosphorus,
right
so it's very hard to assimilate?
can't assimilate it. And then we've got 8 different types of really, most of them bad calciums on the market, right, that our body can't use. Like, I mean, calcium carbonate is chalk, I don't know. It seems cheaper if you just eat chalk, but I don't think that's going to work.
I
It's
don't
not
think
going to
so
work
either.
for assimilation. So you have to look at, just because calcium is low, we still have to go to the story, just like we talked about with cholesterol, right? We go to the story. Why is the calcium trying to tell us it's not on the bus? Right? We don't know if
Mhm.
it's in the bone. We don't know. Maybe the bones look good. It's just not on the bus.
Mm-hmm.
So why didn't it get on the bus? Well, it needs some friends to help out. Sometimes it needs some B12, it needs some magnesium to help it get on the bus. It's at the
Vi- vitamin
handicap crossing,
vitamin
right?
D3,
And the
K2.
D3, right? And the K2. So it needs a village, okay, to
Yeah,
get it on the bus, right?
yeah.
So getting it on the bus, then we can see, okay, it's being transported. But is it actually getting off at the stop that it needs to? We have to look at the whole story.
In
So,
other words, if it's circulating in the blood but it's not going into the bone, that's a
right,
problem.
that's a problem too. So, you've got high calcium, you got low calcium. What are they really telling us? We don't know. We don't know what either one of those are telling us by one number. We know
Mm-hmm.
nothing. We just know I can read a number that relates to calcium. That's what we know for sure. Okay. Because we have free calcium index ranges that are contingent on where your phosphorus is too, of how it binds to the protein so that it can actually get on the bus and get off the bus. It's kind of like it needs a therapy dog, right? So it takes this little partner with it to make sure it can get from point A to point B. We have to look at all of that. What's not moving? What's the transportation? What's the assimilation? What's your gut look like? Because a lot of people taking a lot of the proton pump inhibitors with the antacids, they're not going to absorb calcium no matter what type. If it's even a very high quality, like microcrystalline hydroxyapatite calcium, you still may not absorb it
If
because
you're low
you're
in stomach acid, which
exactly
you're taking drugs to lower your stomach acid because you supposedly have heartburn or GERD,
right.
then that's having repercussions through your whole body with minerals you can't absorb, protein you can't break down,
Right.
so forth.
So there we are with that ripple effect, and we're setting up a pattern, right?
And
So how do we get out of that pattern?
that's where genuine naturopathy comes in. The naturopathic mindset is because it's holistic. It's not looking at one symptom, one disease,
Right.
one number on
Right.
the blood test. It's trying to look at the big picture and say,
Yeah.
what's going on here? So we can go back to the root cause. Well, I
Right.
think
I mean,
that's
I
a
want
good.
the whole story. I want the once upon a time. I want the build up leading into the plot twist, right? And then I want the happily ever after and then the end, right? I want the whole story. I don't want to just know that Alice stayed down a little rabbit hole somewhere. That I want the whole story. So that's kind of what we're looking at with the blood. We want the whole story.
Good. Well, Kim, thank you for introducing us to this. Obviously,
Thanks.
this is just a bare covering of it, but I hope it will wake people up to when you go to the doctor and you have one number is out of range, that is not the whole story. You need to look at the larger picture and assess it from that, because just lowering your cholesterol or just taking more calcium or iron will not necessarily solve the problem unless you've dug into the root cause. So we'll put some contact information for Kim in the link below if you'd like to get a hold of her. I know you're booked months in advance for clients, right?
A little bit, a little bit. Sorry.
But
we're about
she
3 months. We're about 3 months out right now.
yeah, but she does, her clinical work based on the blood chemistry, and she's extremely good at it, because I will sometimes get to take clients to her and give her blood, and she tells me a whole bunch of stuff about it. So I really appreciate her. It's good that we're partners.
Thank you. Thank you.
um, but anyway, thanks, Kim, for being on. We'll
Thanks.
have Kim on again to talk about some other holistic approaches to healing, and we'll catch you on the next episode of Healthy Conversations. Welcome to Healthy Conversations, sharing the knowledge, experience, stories, and the wisdom of herbalists and other natural healers, with your host, Stephen Horn. Today's guest, Kimberly Vallis.